Alright, what's going on, everybody? This is Z Street here, back to brand new video. Um, week 2, college football. Bit of a slower week this week. There's only one ranked game, the entire top 25. I was kind of shocked to see that. There's still a lot of good games. However, for the most part, we're going to see a lot of blowouts today, so this video might be a bit shorter. I think it's also the start of the NFL. As I'm not a big NFL fan, so we won't be covering the NFL because I know way less about the NFL than I do college. But had a really cool game. Bills versus Ravens. Go check out the highlights if you haven't. But let's go ahead and get into week 2 of college football. Starting off, we had the new number 1 team in the nation that should have been number 1 from the start. Let's be real. The defending national champions, Ohio State. Julian Sain in his second start ever. 306 yards. Now, he was playing Grambling, but still, pretty impressive. 70 to nothing. No shock there. Florida International, FIU, versus number 2 team in the nation, Penn State. Excuse me. 34 to nothing. No shock there. Louisiana Tech versus LSU, number 3 in the nation. 23 to 7. Probably a bit lower scoring than anticipated. I would have figured that LSU should have scored at least 35 to 40-ish points here, but a win is a win. We got Austin Pay. I don't even know where that is. It's not Austin, I don't think. Austin, Texas, but maybe it is. I'm not sure. But they played them before Georgia. 28 to 6. Also pretty low scoring when you think about the weak competition they're playing. I'm not a big fan of Georgia this year, to be honest with you guys. I think Georgia's going to lose quite a bit more games than people might think. Number 5, Miami, coming off a big win last week versus Notre Dame. Carson Beck proving that he might actually be a good quarterback, and it might have been actually Georgia's fault last year. 45 to 3 against Bethune-Cookman, which I believe is a newer college that has moved up from Division 2 or whatever to Division 1, something along those lines, or from the FCS to the FBS. I can't really remember but they did move up. But they had no shot here versus number 5 Miami. And then we got number 6 Oregon versus Oklahoma State. Now, this was one of the bigger shockers. Oklahoma State being a Power 5 team that was only in the playoffs a couple years ago, but has since, in recent times with the NIL, they just cannot compete whatsoever. For instance, I think Oregon spends roughly $40 million on their team just in terms of NIL, just essentially giving players money to come play for them. Meanwhile, Oklahoma State only spends about $7 million, so it's a big disparity there, and it shows on the field. Obviously, the skill gap is insane. Oklahoma State, a Power 5 team, gets blown out by Oregon, 69 to 3. Now, this tells us two things. One, Oklahoma State is probably really bad and will probably have a very, very poor year, and will probably not have a winning record, I would anticipate, and will not go to a bowl game. Other thing is that Oregon is going to be a very, very good team this year, maybe even better than last year. And last year, they went undefeated throughout the entire season. I'm pretty sure Oregon, Ohio State will play. I feel like when those two teams play, that will be one of those two teams' only loss. I think Oregon is very dangerous this year. Dante Moore is a great quarterback. I think he probably will be better than Dylan Gabriel. I'm not going to lie. Let's keep going. Texas versus San Jose State. Arch Manning, obviously playing a much different team than Ohio State, had nearly 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, funny thing about this was that within the span of, I think actually there were 3 turnovers very early for Texas. There was an interception and 2 fumbles. Out of those turnovers, the next 5 minutes were 4 touchdowns. So 4 touchdowns in 5 minutes is pretty impressive. Must be going to the Texas game next week, which will be pretty fun. But Arch Manning had a great game. Maybe helps them give them some confidence boost for the remainder of the season. Clemson and Troy. This game was very, very close, closer than the scoreboard predicts. At halftime, as you can see by this score here, Troy was up 16 to 3, and people were like, "Uh-oh, Clemson maybe should be ranked that high. Maybe, you know, their loss last week wasn't a fluke. Maybe Clemson's not a good team. Maybe they were overrated. And then obviously they pulled out 17 points in the third quarter and ended up winning 27-16. Uh, Probably a big wake up call for Clemson that they had a lot of work to do if they want to be competitive in the playoffs this year. Um, which doesn't shock me. Clemson's been on the down swing ever since even before NIL pulled out because again they just don't have the money to compete with other schools. Um, they'll probably still be pretty good, but I think that their time of dominance when they had the Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence is definitely over and will never return. Um, Probably will make the playoffs given how weak the ACC is, but I think the ACC is on the upswing in terms of teams being good, so they might even, I don't know. I wouldn't shock me if they don't make the playoffs. South Carolina State versus South Carolina. 38-0. Northsouth only had 128 yards passing, but some of the plays that he pulled off were utterly insane. He is so talented physically. Um, Pretty much Lamar Jackson, the second coming of Lamar Jackson, essentially. So bright future ahead for the kid for sure. Illinois versus Duke. I figured this game would have been a bit closer. But it wasn't. But the half it was. It was 14-13. And then you see a big disparity in the second half. Uh, yeah, ugly. 45-19 is the final score. Illinois, number 11 in the nation, giving us a good wake-up call that maybe they are a pretty good team this year. It's Duke. Duke's never been a good football program, but still. Here's the big upset of the week. 12 seed Arizona, or sorry, not 12 seed, 12 ranked Arizona versus Mississippi State. This is a now new Big 12 team, no longer Pac 12, playing a bottom tier, let me rephrase that, bottom tier SEC team just upset Arizona State. Predicted to probably win the Big 12 and go into the playoffs. And they lost. Which I think just proves how much weaker the Big 12 is compared to the SEC. Another big upset, arguably even bigger. South Florida versus number 13, Florida. 18-16. Game-winning field goal. DJ Lagway, one of the Heisman favorites, does not have a good game. His team is, and this is a game you can't afford to lose because you know how competitive the SEC is going to be, and they have one of the toughest schedules this year. I think it's actually number one in the entire nation, and you cannot afford to lose these games. It's gonna hurt your resume very, very bad because you are gonna drop a few games in the SEC. So this could have very big ramifications for Florida in terms of not making the playoffs this year. I didn't expect them to make it anyways, but East Texas A&M, didn't know this school existed, versus Florida State, 77-3. Florida State is back, folks. Castellanos, a transfer from Boston College, is proving why it's very important to have a good quarterback on your team. They had DJ Lugawaiwe, whatever, last year, and he is utter garbage. But this is a good quarterback. Talks a lot of smack, but he backs it up. And so, hey, more power to you. Florida State is back after having a horrible year last year. They are back. Number 15 seed Michigan traveling to Norman, Oklahoma. This is where College Game Day was held. Oklahoma pulls off the upset, 24-13. John Mater, a transfer from Washington State, I believe, or Matter, however you say it. It's a pretty darn good quarterback, and definitely an upgrade from last year for Oklahoma. Because what they're really missing, great defense. Like Oklahoma is a very physical team, get in your face team. Always been that way, especially with their new head coach. But last year their offense was god awful, one of the worst in the entire country. But they got a good quarterback, and they are looking dangerous and deadly. And we'll see how they fare in the SEC. They upset Michigan. Bryce Underwood did not have a good game at all. But here's the thing: they weren't letting him throw. They're running it straight in the nose of Oklahoma, which you cannot do against Oklahoma. You cannot run right into Oklahoma. That's not how you beat them. You beat them on the outside, and you spread them out. And they didn't do that. They played right into their hands, and they lost. So that was horrible coaching, in my opinion, in terms of Michigan. Horrible game plan, and sucks to suck, I guess. Iowa and Iowa State, 16-13. Iowa State barely surviving, staying undefeated. looking like one of the potential Big 12 winners. Another big upset here. Well, kind of big is Baylor beating SMU. Baylor off last week's horrible loss. People are like, man, Baylor sucks again. They beat SMU in overtime, game-winning field goal in second overtime rather. SMU, one of those teams having a great year last year in which they made the playoffs. This is a shocking loss here, you know. Um, they gotta figure it out. Moving on to Utah State and Texas A&M. No shock here. I will say the one thing I am kind of a little sus on in terms of A&M is that they allowed Utah State to score 22 points on them. Yes, they won by 22, but like you should not be giving up 22 points to Utah State. Again, A&M is not going to fare well in the SEC in my opinion. If you're an A&M fan, tough. You know it's coming anyways. Like accept it at this point. But yeah, Ole Miss and Kentucky. Ole Miss survives. It's a good Kentucky squad. Ole Miss is always one of those teams that always plays pretty well, but just can never go over the hump because they're not a football school. Ole Miss wins 30-23. Keep moving on. UL Monroe. If you don't know, UL Monroe was actually beat Alabama in Nick Saban's first year. Um, Alabama wins 73-0. So silence the doubters, I suppose. East Tennessee State versus Tennessee, 72-17 is insane. They scored 24 points. Excuse me. They scored 48 points in one half. That is insane. But not shocking, given that they're playing East Tennessee State. Like, you know, these are just warm games. These are just games that just pad stats. Let's be real. And these games are they play these teams at a certain amount of money, which helps them keep the program alive. You know what I'm saying? It's important to have these, but whatever. Indiana versus Kennesaw State, another blowout game, 56-9. No shock there. The blowout game. A lot of blowout games here this week. Texas Tech, 62-14 versus Kent State. And then 63-9, Cal Poly versus Utah. So, let's go ahead and let's go into the stats here. Season leaders, what we got cooking. In terms of passing, this guy from WKU, I find every year there's always a dude from a very, very small school that just lights it up and is always number one. That's him. That's him this year. Then we got Baylor, Avery Johnson, the dude from Duke, surprisingly, and then the guy from USC. Rushing, oh my gosh. Get this ad out of here. Shh. One thing I really recognize is Justin Hayes from Michigan. It's so surprising given how often they run the ball. Receiving, no big names up here right now. Huh. Let's go ahead and go into schedule for next week. Nope, not that. I like to do scores. Let's check out week 3 what we got coming up. Indiana versus Indiana State should be a blowout. Oregon versus Northwestern should be a blowout. Georgia Tech versus Clemson. Georgia Tech has this pretty good spread option, read option offense. Almost beat Georgia last year. I think, honestly, if I had to pick an upset, it'd be this one right here. And honestly, I will be rooting for Georgia Tech. I do anticipate Georgia Tech will upset Clemson here. And they'll be at Georgia Tech, so that's right? Yeah, I don't know, honestly. Oklahoma and Temple should be a blowout. Wisconsin and Alabama should be a blowout, question mark? I don't know. We'll see. Might be a little bit closer, but Central Michigan versus Michigan, another blowout. South Alabama versus Auburn, another blowout. Auburn, top 25. Villanova, Penn State, blowout. Georgia, Tennessee, here's a really good game. I'm assuming this is where game day is going to be. The toss-up right there. If I had to pick a team I want to win, it would definitely be Tennessee. Oregon State versus Texas Tech should be a blowout. Oregon State is utter poo-poo this year. Iowa State, Arkansas State, another blowout. Actually, funny thing about last week, Arkansas State and Arkansas, U of A, have never played ever until last week. Pretty cool. Louisiana, Raging Cajuns versus Missouri should be a blowout. UTEP, this is the game I'm going to, versus Texas should be a blowout. South Florida versus Miami, this will be a really good game. Potential upset. That'd be 3 upsets. That'd be 3 top 25 upsets in a row for South Florida if they pull this off. I kind of hope they do, to be honest with you. That'd be really cool to see. Iowa versus Ohio State, ups blowout. Western Michigan versus Illinois, blowout. Arkansas versus Ole Miss. Probably Ole Miss will probably kick their teeth in, but you never know. You never know. Arkansas might pull a fast one. Florida and LSU. Florida needs to get this win to get back on the saddle, but I don't think they will. LSU is pretty darn good this year, and they're going to be going to Death Valley. A&M versus Notre Dame. It's going to be a pretty good game too. Notre Dame needs to get this game. They need to win this game because they have one of the weakest schedules, and if they're 0-2 versus top 25 teams, then they should not be in the playoffs. Let's be real. Vandy versus South Carolina. We saw Vandy beat Alabama last year, so we never know, but should be a blowout. Utah and Wyoming blowout. Let's also go into the rankings, see if anything's shaken up in week 2. Not much movement up here in the top 10. Georgia just falls down a bit. Florida State's moving up into the top 10, as is Illinois. Dropping from top 10 is South Carolina and Clemson. Oklahoma moving up quick, up 5. Same with Tennessee, they moved up 7. Few movements. South Florida does not move. Michigan falls 8 ranks. Utah up 5. Auburn and Missouri not ranked are now ranked. Dropping from the rankings was Arizona State. From 12 all the way out. Florida all the way from 13 out. And SMU 17 out. Just behind them, just trying to get in top 25, we got Arizona State, BYU, Georgia Tech, Florida, USC, TCU, Mississippi State, Louisville, SMU. So yeah, that's it for week 2. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys for week 3, probably on Sunday or Monday. Anyways, have a good rest of your evening, and see you guys next video. Don't forget to leave a like, by the way.